Hey guys, it's your boy. And again, I'm going to dive deep into narcissism and empath dynamics when they merge, how the two trauma manifest. And I love focusing on narcissism pre-MPD, MPD, but also seriously for me, my condition and my definition, my true, honest to God definition is overly soft, porous empath. That's not better than narcissism. Let's not mistake it here. It's just a polarity distance I'm very grateful for. So I'm looking at the conditions and the unconscious patterns of MPD and how it's formed, and also the unconscious patterns and the wounding of the overly soft empath. So, two traumatized children, narcissistic psychopathic dad or narcissistic siblings, overly soft mum, something goes wrong, and there's a split. The child feels that it can't be its true self. The overly soft empath child world is if I shrink and hyper attune to other people's needs and disappear, I'll be safe. The narcissist child through narcissistic abuse inflates like a balloon, expands to protect itself and creates a very strong false self and with no inner cellular core identity. Um, a lady on Facebook a few days ago, because I'm doing a lot of posts on it, told me something really deep and profound in duality of the two trauma children, MPD and overly soft empath. So I want to read out from ChatGPT and what she said, because I feel that she was correct. Either she's done research on ChatGPT or she's been thinking through things. So the duality based of the two opposites, obviously opposites attract, guys, right? Um, makes um, the empath narcissist relationship one of the most karmically beautiful in hindsight, and going through hell in during for the empath, and then afterwards, um, the narcissist is the one that suffers. The empath gets to process easier. It's an easier contract to process. It's not easy, and then the narcissist has just no mirror, so they got to. So here's the truth. Um, a core wound of the overly soft empath is abandonment. Core wound of the overly hardened narcissist is shame. Narcissists can't process shame, and empaths have a very extreme core wound of abandonment. I definitely have an extreme core wound of abandonment. Um, MPD narcissists have a more avoidant attachment style. Empaths have a more anxious attachment style. Narcissistic personality, also pre-NDP, is more of a toxic masculine role, unhealed, and an overly soft empath is more of a toxic feminine energy. That's what she said, and then I unpacked it with ChatGPT. The narcissist avoids their own shame. The empath hyper focuses on others' needs to prevent abandonment, and I've definitely got deep abandonment trauma, that's for sure. I know that within myself. And my ex told me so I abandoned myself, and abandon empaths abandon themselves through trauma. Overgiving. An empath, these are all simplistic duality things. Empath overgives, a narcissist overtakes and has no issue. The empath keeps giving, giving, giving of its own bucket until it's depleted. The narcissist keeps taking, 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 and it creates, in time, very toxic dynamics. I was definitely an overgiver, and it cost me self-abandonment. So the masculine feminine here isn't about gender, it's about energetic tendencies and relationships. The MPD is a toxic masculine because the characteristics of their dynamic with empaths is control, projection, dominance, emotional detachment, reactive aggression, suppression of vulnerability. Now, the empath overly soft is toxic feminine because its characteristics in dating an MPD is its hyper emotionality, overgiving, internalizing blame, enmeshment, boundary erosion. Empaths internalize blame from childhood, but I do it almost to a toxic level. Um, I'm taking on the blame for abuse I've been through as a child, and it becomes a habit, and it's been a big problem of mine internalizing. It's a subconscious thing, and that's perfect when they date a narcissist because a narcissist can't handle shame or guilt, so they externalize shame and guilt and blame projection, gaslighting, and the empath is the perfect victim, the perfect person. That's why it's the trap so deep to take on that blame because we already internalized too much blame from what we've been through. Um, in a relationship, narcissist person withdraws, empath chases. It triggers abandonment fear. Then the NPD experiences projected shame, withdraws more. Empath overgives. NPD receives and avoids accountability. Empath internalizes blame, reinforces anxious attachment. Over time, the dynamic becomes a self-referencing loop, often called the trauma bond, which is crazy. Empaths, overly soft empaths have a much deeper abandonment trauma than NPD. They absorb emotions from others, often from early childhood. Their core abandonment wound is intensified because they never learned that their needs could be safely expressed. They constantly adapt to others' emotional states to avoid rejection. They experience chronic hypervigilance, scanning for threats of abandonment and emotional withdrawal. Yeah, I know those feelings. The reason why NPD children often develop shame-based defenses. They can't process shame to an extreme level. And they're avoidant or controlling strategies, but they externalize blame and may not feel abandonment as intensely as overly soft empaths, this NPD. They protect themselves with defensiveness and protection and inversion. They attack, blame others. Porous empaths feel the pain of abandonment deeply because they take on responsibility for relational survival, whereas empathy children avoid feeling the abandonment internally. The porous empath goes there with the feeling, the NPD just can't handle it. Over porous empaths must process the depth of abandonment trauma, not just the surface level guilt or shame. This is why they often overgive in relationships, stay in toxic cycles, absorb blame from other projections. Healing requires for porous empaths reclaiming boundaries, internal validation, otherwise the trauma bond perpetuates subconsciously. So both empaths and NPD have to process internal guilt and shame. Ironically, the NPD has a far deeper level, far more guilt and shame because their whole unconscious pattern is that's too painful to go there even a little bit. So they blame their shame and they blame. So they can't feel shame and guilt. But also the empath has shame and guilt, but to a far lesser extent. But then the empath has a more serious abandonment trauma that must be tackled. So that's pretty much it. All right, it's things I'm learning, hope to teach, hope to learn, and seriously know what to work on myself.